Welcome back to Web 2.0.tv. I'm Thomas Tucker. I'm here with Dave Shaw from Russell Shaw. So nice to have you here, sir.
Thanks for having me here.
We're broadcasting live from the Innotek Trade Show here in Austin, Texas, downtown beautiful Austin, Texas, at the Austin Convention Center. Dave, we're talking about Web 2.0 a little bit today and how it's affecting users, how it's affecting their abilities to interact and to give feedback to some of the larger companies and changing the structure of the online world. How would you define Web 2.0 and as it pertains to your industry specifically, and how do you feel it's changed your marketplace over the last year or so?
Well, the way we define it really, it's about audiences that have like-minded interests coming together and speaking about things that are relevant to them. And relevance is really the key thing for our industry. When you think about it from a marketing perspective, the number one value that customers are looking for, when brands want to connect to audiences, they have to be relevant to them.
Absolutely.
That's the basic thing. And that's true about marketing no matter what. So that really hasn't changed too much with Web 2.0. It just gives us more power to reach specific audiences in clusters of like-minded individuals that we can be really directly laser sharp targeted to who's going to be interested in what we have to say.
Absolutely. So you want to be as relevant as possible to create that community experience and that bond.
Yes, yes. The product is the message, we like to say.
Absolutely.
If the product is not good, no amount of advertising, PR, social networking, or events will make any difference whatsoever.
Well, as an integrated kind of marketing firm, especially a leader in your particular field, how do you plan to effectively reach consumers in this new very ad-saturated social networking environment?
Well, there are really four parts to that, the way we think about it. The first one I already spoke about, and that's really about relevance.
Yes.
The second one is go where the customer, the audience, the consumer is. Go where they are and be where they expect you to be. And that's really one of the great powers of Web 2.0 because we can really discreetly identify where people are that have similar interests. So we can go directly to them with our message. There's not a lot of wasted other media use, which is very nice. The third thing that I think is really important is when you go where they are, you got to identify brand ambassadors, the people who are really going to evangelize for you, the opinion leaders. And once you've identified them, give them the tools that they need so that they can go spread the word. Online, it could be a widget. Honestly, out in the world, it could be going to an event and simply product sampling so that they can experience it and talking about it with their friends. It could be talkbacks online where they can comment on what is important to them about the brand, but give them the tools to really talk about it and engage. So that's really important. And then the fourth thing that's most important, the brand promise must be backed up at all times. And if it's not, make sure you fix it.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't really argue with that. In kind of the old school days, marketing industries or PR firms, they could buy their way out of a big PR problem. They could really say, I am going to monopolize all of this media and direct a message to make sure that you understand what my viewpoint is. With these user-generated reviews and blogging reaching an all-time crescendo all over the world, how do you prepare for and deal with potential serious PR disasters and being able to get your message out there effectively?
Yeah, that's something that you really have to think about on the front end. And by that I mean announcer prevention is really the critical thing to think about. So in that regard, issues like transparency. Be out there with the truth at all times. On the web in particular, something that goes on the web is on the web forever. Essentially, once you're there,
Wayback Machine has your number.
You are there. You are there. You're always going to be there. So it's really important that you have to start philosophically that there's nothing that I can really hide behind. I'm exposed. So transparency is important. An ounce of prevention is really important. And then if crises do happen, and invariably they do.
Invariably they do.
We even saw a hiccup. I would say with iPhone. A lot of people acknowledge that. Well, then it's really not about the mistake. It's really about how do you handle it. It's about how do you handle it in a very public way. Again, in a relevant way that's going to really take care of the customer in a way that matters to them, and that's done in a way that people visibly can really see it. So they understand, I can forgive a mistake. It's what you do afterwards that's really going to make a difference.
So you have to acknowledge the mistake, acknowledge that you've inconvenienced your user or your customer, then pick up the ball and run with it with transparency kept in mind so that they know that you're actively fixing the problem.
That's absolutely correct. And in some cases, crisis is also opportunity, if you really think about it.
Absolutely.
We've seen that a number of times, and iPhone, again, is an example of that.
I agree. So how do Web 2.0 powered online PR campaigns stack up to traditional media campaigns? I mean, how is the ROI comparable?
The ROI, well, the way we really think about that is we actually don't think about it in an either-or sort of circumstance. We tend to look at the way media now is actually blurring overall. So for us, it's not necessarily about going one way or the other or thinking about this ROI versus that ROI. Of course, we're always thinking about ROI, but we're really thinking about what's the way to reach the customer in the most effective way. In some cases, that's going to be web social networking. In some cases, It's going to be field marketing. In some cases, it's going to be earned media, working with traditional publicity channels. Sure. In other cases, it's going to be giving the customer a product that they can directly experience for themselves. Try before you buy.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they can really experience the features.
Sample.
Sample. All these have different ROIs that are attached to them. So we're not necessarily measuring web versus traditional. Okay. It's not binary to us.
But see, you can you can measure everything on the web. You can measure click-through rates, you can measure, attendance, you can measure everything.
Absolutely.
And so when you're looking at traditional marketing, especially with radio, and you talk to, say, a radio station, and they say, well, our demographics tend to skew toward, listeners in between the ages of 18 and 35, and they like country music, and they tend to be, but when you really look at the numbers, their skew isn't that far. As a matter of fact, it's usually like no more than a 5-point spread. But when you're talking about being able to directly target those people that are interested in a specific product, that are interested in that are close to the buying decision with web-based marketing, it would seem that putting more money into web-based marketing would yield a better ROI, especially than radio.
Yeah, in that case, we absolutely do look at that. And what we're talking about there is efficiency of your dollar.
Right.
And we're always looking at that for our clients in our business. We're looking at efficiency.
Absolutely.
Right now, we're not seeing a whole lot of efficiency, for example, on TV.
Okay.
Not to say it doesn't have its place in the world,
right,
but it's maybe not the most efficient media. Web is extraordinarily efficient because I can laser focus exactly who I want to speak to.
Right.
And the thing that we really think about in Web 2.0 are feedback loops. We're always thinking about feedback loops, whether it takes a whole lot of different forms. It could be threaded conversations, it could be user-generated content,
Absolutely.
It could be widgets that we give them for them to experience product. I mean, there are all sorts of different ways that we can track that and measure it and really see how are they really engaging the brand.
Now, especially with the advent of streaming TV on the web, where, if I missed Heroes last week, I can go back to NBC.com and watch it there. I mean, so many people have TiVos. So many people pre-record, with a personal video recorder, their TV shows, and then go back through, and they fast forward through all the commercials. But whenever you go to watch it on the web, you can't fast forward through that ad. There's no functionality. So how is that affecting that particular marketplace and the ad exposure to those advertisements?
Well, that's actually, I would actually argue that network TV doesn't get enough credit for doing a pretty good job with online content. They've done a pretty good job with that.
They've done pretty well.
One of the things that we're seeing now is that the 30-second spot delivered live over broadcast is not necessarily getting the same relevance as how am I reaching the customer over the next 7-day window online.
Okay.
So what we're seeing is opportunities for advertisers to actually extend their buy.
To follow up.
Yeah, exactly. They're able to follow up and they can track it over a number of days, not just did I tune in at 8 o'clock that night. And so there actually is even more value, I would argue, for an advertiser to do the online content versus just buying the regular spot through broadcast in that case.
So over the last, I'd say, 10 years, advertising saturation has just reached an all-time high. I mean, especially if you walk down Broadway in NYC, it's just all over the place.
You know how many messages consumers are exposed to in a single day?
I've heard this before, but I don't know.
About 5,000.
That is ridiculous.
How many of those do you remember?
Well, all of them really, because I'm brilliant. No,
you're that good.
But I mean, I'm assuming that the saturation is only going to increase. But the way that you're talking about these advertising, these advertisements now, it seems to me that they're going to be more relevant and more targeted as time goes on. So perhaps will retention of those advertisements go up? And our disregard of those advertisements kind of go down over the next couple of years?
Yes, what we've seen, we've really seen, the way we like to talk about it is we've seen a trend where we've changed from a seller-driven economy,
right,
where the seller can just put their message out from on high, and buy a roadblock on TV and reach as many people as they possibly can and get it to the lowest common denominator. It's a buyer's
infomercial.
It's a buyer's economy right now. You have to be directly relevant to the buyer because they can tune you out.
They can.
And if you're not relevant to them, it really won't make a difference what it is that you're trying to say. So you really got to reach them in a way that's meaningful to them in their day-to-day life.
Well, David, we got a lot of content relevant stuff going on here today, so don't tune us out. We'll be right back with Web 2.0.tv. Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
We'll be right back.